Alright, so in today's season preview for the Arizona Coyotes, I'm going to be taking a look at their roster, getting some numbers on the team, and also giving a playoff prediction for them as well. Now, let me start off by saying this. The Arizona Coyotes have made it clear that they're more than likely going into a retool/rebuild mode for this upcoming season anyways. And because of that, we know that they've sold off a lot of pieces, a lot of key pieces this offseason, and the team looks vastly different now. I want to mention this. It was just a short 6 years ago that the Coyotes had a terrible season in which they only had 56 points. They finished second last in the league. They ended up picking third overall in the 2015 draft. They got Dylan Strome. I'm sure all of you remember that name. Obviously, we know he never really panned out in Arizona. He went to Chicago. He's doing okay over there now. The point is, here we are 6 short years later, and the Coyotes are kind of rebuilding the rebuild. And I also want to go back to 2 years ago, the offseason of 2019, where Arizona looked like they were on the verge of becoming a pretty good team. They acquired Phil Kessel in late June of 2019. They acquired Taylor Hall in December of 2019. And things were looking really good for them. They were finally getting some big names. John Chayka, their then GM at the time, was quoted as saying, "We don't want to just survive anymore, we want to thrive." And things were looking really good for the Coyotes, like I said, but unfortunately here we are today having this conversation. With that off my chest, let's get some numbers on the team. Their power play last year was 20.8%. That was good for 13th, so in the upper half of the league. Not bad there. Arizona's been a team that's known to struggle to score goals. So for a team that's known to do that, they had a pretty good power play. Their penalty kill was pretty good as well. It was 80.8%. That was good for 11th. They were 23rd in goals for with 150, and they were 22nd in goals against with 174. Go back to that power play number for a little bit, because 20.8%, that was last year's number, as we know. I think the power play expected to be a lot lower this season just because of some of the names they've sold off. Christian Dvorak really helped that power play. Connor Garland really helped that power play. And yes, even Ekman Larsson helped it as well. Even though there's been a lot of talk about him declining, he's still a good option to have back there on the power play. Maybe not as good as in years past, but still a good one nonetheless. All right, let's get to their lineup now. On the first line, I have Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Phil Kessel playing together. And for me, this is kind of a good third/second line. This goes to show the Coyotes maybe don't have a ton of scoring depth this year. I think they have a lot of solid players that can play well defensively up and down their lineup, but not a lot of guys that can score up and down their lineup. Don't get me wrong, Phil Kessel is a great goal scorer. I think Clayton Keller has more goals to give as well in his career. Nick Schmaltz always leaves me wanting more too. But even though Nick Schmaltz does leave me wanting more, I see him as a guy who's more of a second or even third line center at this point of his career. He makes over $5 million. I think that is a bit of an overpayment for the production he's put out so far, but hopefully he'll live up to that contract this year because the Coyotes are going to need him to do that. Phil Kessel screams being traded out at the deadline. I just don't see a scenario where they re-sign this guy. It wouldn't make sense for them to re-sign him. He is getting up there in his 30s. That doesn't really fit with what the Coyotes are trying to do, trying to get younger, obviously. And I could really see Phil Kessel, especially if he's having a great season, traded out at the deadline. And Arizona, who already has 3 first-round picks in 2022, could find themselves with a 4th if Kessel's having a really good season. And, of course, they would choose to trade him out at the deadline if that was the case. Now that, of course, is assuming the Arizona Coyotes will not be contending for a playoff spot this year. Second line, I have Ryan Desingle, Barrett Hayton, and Christian Fischer. Desingle's a guy who I could see the Coyotes trading out at the trade deadline if they're not in contention. Desingle's a guy who can get you 15 to 20 goals maybe. I mean, I don't think he's a perennial 20-goal scorer. Barrett Hayton, what's he going to be like? He was taken 5th overall back in 2018. He hasn't really panned out so far. He's shown flashes of being a good player, but I still think he hasn't reached his full ceiling yet, so I wouldn't be too concerned if I'm a Coyotes fan. I like Christian Fischer, but in the bottom 6, I don't really like him in the top 6. I think he's a guy who's a good penalty killer, decent skater. He plays a physical game. He can chip in a little bit offensively too, don't get me wrong, but it's not at a top 6 forward level. On the third line, I have Lawson Krause, Johan Larsson, and Dmitry Yashkin. This is a pretty thick, heavy line. I mean, Krause is a big man, Yashkin's a big man, and even at only 5'11", Johan Larsson's pretty stocky at 200 pounds for that height. This is going to be more of a hard-working third line, maybe would have been better suited as a 4th line on a contending team, but still an effective group nonetheless. And to round out the fourth line, I have Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, and Antoine Roussel. Roussel is a guy who makes himself very hated amongst his opponents. I don't think that's any secret by now. Louis Eriksson has 1 year left on that albatross of a deal he signed back in 2016. Jay Beagle, not on a great contract either. He's only got 1 year left on it too. So fortunately for the Arizona Coyotes, they can get out from under those bad contracts by the end of this season. Although I will say this, Jay Beagle is an effective player. He wins faceoffs very well. He's a great penalty killer too. And when you win faceoffs, hopefully that'll help the Arizona Coyotes' possession numbers. Let's switch to defense now. On the first pair, I have Jacob Chychrun and Connor Timmins. On the second pair, I have Shane Gostisbehere and Ilya Lyubushkin. And on the third pair, I have Anton Stralman and Victor Soderstrom. I could see Soderstrom moving up ahead of Ilya Lyubushkin. I don't think Lyubushkin is a top 4 defenseman. I just kind of put him there to start, but I could see Soderstrom replacing him on that second pairing. In goal, I have Carter Hart and Joseph Coronar. Coronar, as we know, was acquired by the Arizona Coyotes from San Jose in exchange for Adin Hill. I didn't really like that the Coyotes gave up Adin Hill. I think he's a good young goalie with a lot of upside. But, I mean, Bill Armstrong, he's kind of getting rid of everyone right now, and I think he's got a pretty big plan up his sleeves as well. I like Carter Hutton as a backup goalie. I don't know if I'm totally sold on him as a starter. So Arizona, they could be in for some ugly games, although I think Hutton is an adequate starter, but him and Coronar are probably going to have to split some of the starts, that's for sure. Extras at forward, I have Blake Spears, Jan Jenik, Hudson Fashion, and Liam Kirk as well. Extras on defense, I have Kyle Capobianco, Cameron Crotty, Ty Emberson. So throw Cam Dineen in there as well, as I think he could make a push for this team this year. I also could see Kyle Capobianco making the Coyotes roster full-time this season. I think he is a good young defenseman. Kind of stalled out a bit in his development. I was expecting him to be a full-time NHLer by now. Well, at least be a solid full-time NHLer. I think he can be that, though, going forward for Arizona. You'd have to think he could outplay a guy like Ilya Lyubushkin, though. And Jenik is a guy who I think could find himself a full-time role on this roster as well at forward. If he can play center for the Coyotes, that would be a huge bonus. That would give them some more center ice depth than what they have now. Circle back on Clayton Keller for a little bit here. This guy was taken 7th overall back in 2016. He's been a pretty good player for the Coyotes, but maybe not worth the 7th overall pick as of right now. He's making over $7 million per year too. So it's probably time he starts living up to that contract. I'd like to see Keller, he's not a big goal scorer, so I'd like to see him get maybe 25 goals, at least 35 assists, 60 points. He had a really good rookie season, and he's never really been the same ever since. 60 points might be a bit of a high ask for Clayton Keller, though, on an Arizona team who's kind of going through a transitional phase right now. Now for a playoff prediction. As you can kind of guess with how I've been talking about the Coyotes in this video, no, there will not be any playoffs in the desert for the Arizona Coyotes this year. I think a good year for them is, developing their young players. They probably should tank. I mean, I don't really want to encourage tanking, but you got to do what's best for your franchise, right? They probably should tank, and I hope for them they get Shane Wright this year, a player who's projected to go 1st overall, a player who could be a franchise-changing talent, and a guy that could really put the Arizona Coyotes on the map in years to come. I just want to talk quickly about Coach Andre Tourigny for a bit. I don't know what style he's going to employ for the Arizona Coyotes. Is he going to be more of a trap-it-up, passive forecheck type of coach? Or is he going to be aggressive? You know what? If you're Andre Tourigny, with no expectations on this team this year, I say let the guys go out, let them play, let them forecheck hard. If they make mistakes, so be it. They're a good young team. Well, they have some good young talent on there that's kind of underachieved so far. I don't think they're going to be a good team this year, but I think if they can, play hard, be a hard team to play against at least. If you're going to finish last, don't be a team that's just an easy out every night where you're getting blown out 6-1, 7-2, stuff like that. I hope the Arizona Coyotes are going to be very competitive and a tough out for everyone that they play. I'm excited to see what Coach Tourigny can do with this young Arizona team who's going through a transitional phase right now. So there it is, a season preview for the Arizona Coyotes. I know this one was kind of a miserable one, but please don't hold that against me, Coyotes fans. I'm just trying to be realistic, and I think it's a very good thing probably if the Arizona Coyotes do tank this year and they don't overachieve, and they get a really good young player in the draft. So let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Also, please like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.